So, episode two
This is
with Doug. We had a lot of feedback from people that they enjoyed having you on here and wanted to hear more from you, and so we're able to bring you right back on, which is great. Uh, we were talking about, well, what do we talk about like in this next one? And very quickly, it came to me that when you and I were going to do our leadership trip, we were sitting around the fire and we were talking, and you said, "Well, tell me what you're not good at." And my first, like, it made me like panic. Like, was the first initial feeling was, I'm not going to tell you what I'm not good at. It made me like really uncomfortable, and you kind of looked at me weird, and you were like, "Well, if you tell me what you're not good at, and I tell you like what I'm not good at, and then those kind of offset each other, then we can help each other out." And I was just like, "That's genius." But my first thought was, I'm not going to tell you what I'm not good at because you're going to use it against me, right? That was literally like my first thought. And then I said, well, I really am not good at like planning and prioritizing and like organizing and putting stuff together like that. And you're like, oh, that's my jam. I love to do that. That's what I'm really good at. And then you said you weren't good at, what was it? Like reading people and then like empathy and uh, there was something else specifically with communication with kids, and I was just like, "It's what I do for a living." I was like, "This is gonna work so great." And then I just remember thinking like, "Why do more people not communicate this way?" Right? And it dawned on me that most people won't go to that level of vulnerability. Right. And most people are very afraid of, like, my initial knee jerk reaction was, you'll use it against me, right? Because I'm sure that's probably what my experience has been in the past, right? Is that when I have stepped into vulnerability. So what I want to do is I want to talk about the definition of vulnerability. I actually got some notes here this time.
winning.
All right. So vulnerability is the state of being exposed to the possibility of being harmed, attacked, or emotionally hurt. So when we think about
Can we
vulnerability,
can we back up one
yeah,
second?
absolutely.
Okay. So let's set the frame here.
Okay.
Okay. That conversation you were just talking about, you were recounting from memory.
Yes.
Okay. How long had we known each other, been friends,
Years.
palling around together, hunting, fishing, like have already done stuff,
Yeah.
have already embraced the suck
Yeah.
together, right? Like it's time to go.
Yeah.
Where's Doug? Right?
Yeah.
you know, all those other things had happened, and yet your first reaction was what?
It was you would use this against me?
Now, had I given you
Never.
history to give like and that's what
No.
that's part of how we have to like set the foundation
Yeah.
here, right? So, had I given you reason that it was reasonable that I was like had I
No.
done it in the past?
No.
Okay. So read your definition again.
Yes. All right. Vulnerability is the state of being exposed to the possibility of being harmed, attacked, or emotionally hurt.
Okay. Harmed, attacked, or emotionally hurt. Had I done any of those?
No.
Okay. So then you were going to your next point, which is what? Your history,
Yeah.
right? Why would you have projected that onto me, right? Because I hadn't given you
No.
in that time, I hadn't given you reason that would be like, yeah, he's going to do it again.
Yeah.
Okay. So unpack that history.
So I think previous experience has been, you know, to not be vulnerable and not expose your weaknesses because those will be exploited. Right. And so, like, what I've experienced, like in work or jobs or even, with guys, right? Guys don't express things vulnerably unless they've been drinking or any of that kind of stuff, like we talked about last time. Um, vulnerability isn't a thing that we typically step into as guys, right? And so that immediate knee-jerk reaction, was because of the history. It had nothing to do with our experience, right? Which is really interesting. When I thought a lot about that, like, why did I react or respond that way? And that's definitely what came up for me was previous experiences and previous relationships and even previous friendships, right? I mean, we've all had negative encounters or had fallouts with friends and that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, that was definitely it.
Yeah, right. And then because we learn that, it becomes a learned response, right? Because we've had bad stuff
Oh yeah.
happen, right? This is that whole, you know, unpacking your baggage, right? Stuff. Everybody's got stuff. I don't
Yep.
have any stuff. You're an idiot. Of course you have stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody's got stuff, right? So you have this experience or experiences over time, whatever. You build up this body of knowledge inside. You've now been trained, in this case, um, not a good way,
Yeah.
right?
Maladaptively.
A
Yeah.
maladaptive training. And so there we are hanging out, and you're like, right? And
Yeah.
and the thing that's interesting there is it was visceral. It was gut. It was instinct,
Yep.
right? It wasn't like you're like, let me dwell upon and see what he says. No, you were like, bang.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
It was like a throw up type moment. It was like that, like type
Right.
feeling.
So that's maybe one thing we've got to really start to think about here as we're talking today is many of these things that happen, they get lodged deep
Yeah.
inside, right? And that when things happen to us, whatever, we talked about that space between stimulus and response. There's still things that happen before we let it come out, right? And you get that response and you get that triggered moment.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, the term trigger has probably been hijacked a little too much these days. But that is part of what happens, right? You get
Yep.
this response, and then what's interesting today is we're getting a chance to unpack like that wasn't even reasonable.
Yeah.
Why am I doing that?
Well, and I heard something recently that I thought was interesting, where they were talking about when you have a response to something, like they gave the example of you're walking down the road and you see something that looks like a snake on the ground and you're walking there with your wife, right? And all of a sudden you stop and you look and you have that knee-jerk reaction, right? That your brain has 300th of a millisecond of response when it visually sees that hose to the reaction, right? And then 500th of a millisecond, you can process something by going to that logical part of your brain in your frontal lobe, and you go, "Oh, that's a water hose," right? And so I have nothing to be afraid of. And then you keep walking, right? And then your wife is like, "What was that?" Right? And
Right.
you're like, "Well, it was nothing." And she was like, "No, like all the
Yeah.
facial stuff was nothing. Like, are you not being honest with me? Like, what's going on here?" And it's not that you're not being honest, it's that the processing of the rational thought takes longer than the visceral reaction of things, right? And that's the thing that I thought was really interesting is that, the visceral reaction, it has to be faster because that's what protects us and keeps us safe,
Yeah.
right? But the logical thinking takes longer, and why it's important for us to be able to have that tool set, right? To be able to like tap into that, to be able to recognize like we'll say triggered, right? I'm
Yeah.
being triggered by something, right? And how I choose to like rationalize it is how I'm going to respond to it.
So I remember reading some research on this kind of a thing, and Scripture talks about we're fearfully and wonderfully made,
Yes.
right? And then I was listening to somebody else, and they're like, "Dude, you're just piloting that meat suit," and I'm like, "What?" He's like, "There's so many things going on in your body you can't control. Like you're piloting that thing,
Yep.
and hoping you don't crash it, right? But like you are not in charge of your
Yeah.
body. There's so much going on, and some of the fascinating things we were talking about, like measurements in time, and what is actually processing, and where the processing is happening. And we talk about gut feeling and things like that. And
Yes.
we're now starting to understand, all the crazy stuff about how the nerves come down, and there truly is a gut and all these things and feeling. The one that surprised me had to do with reaction times. And they were talking about if you put your hand on a stove and you jerk your hand away, you'll move your hand before you register it's hot.
Yes.
Okay, so how did the brain even know how to do that? And I don't know, high-speed camera or something, they measure it. And the response to pull the hand away happens before the sensory input could have even made it to the brain. And they came to realize, oh no, it's when that message makes it to the spinal cord. The spinal cord is what tells the hand to pull it back before it even passes it along to the brain. Wait a minute. So there's like thinking and
Yeah.
responses going on in your spinal column. And you're like, well, yeah, actually your spinal column is just part of your brain. Wow, this blows up everything I learned in health class, right?
Yeah.
Like, holy cow. And so this whole thing to realize, like these training pieces, like you're talking about, are maladaptive training.
Yes.
They don't just happen up here in our head, right? When we talk about heartache, why do we say it's a heartache? I mean, if we rationally know all of our feelings are in our head, then why isn't it a headache, right? Like, and it's so exciting when we start being a little vulnerable and looking at how we're made and like what's going on, and be like, wow, this is really fascinating. There's so much depth, richness in who we are, and yet come back to your point. You're going to use this against me, right?
Yeah.
And this goes into that whole thing we talked about last time. One of the pieces of feedback I got from someone that watched a woman, grandma, and she had listened to our podcast, and she says, wow, I never knew that whole thing. And I'm like, what thing? Like, it was 90 minutes long.
That one thing that we talked about for an hour.
Right. And she's like, the whole thing about why it's stressful for men around their families, that you're never off duty.
Yeah.
And she's like, I mean, as women, we're just always women. We're just always mom, or we're like she was like, it didn't occur to her that was even a thing.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, how can we all be so different yet all be the same? Right?
Yeah.
And this gets really interesting, and I'm sure we'll have some future conversations talking about, the difference between the sexes and all that kind of stuff. Yet at the same time, as we learn things, right, we have to remember we all have a worldview, and that worldview is always being shaped.
Yes.
As we grow, right? You start, and you're growing, and even now, right, in our 40s and our 50s, we're still getting input that is going to impact our worldview. In fact, this gets into that whole thing about being a very discerning filter for yourself. Like, what are you filling yourself with? Like, recently somebody said, quoted back to me the whole, show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that's a piece of wisdom I haven't heard in decades, and it's still very true, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is your environment? What is going on? And I know both of us have had some challenges when we were younger, in our childhood and such, and that left, marks on us, right? And that gives us some of those maladaptive behaviors that we still struggle with in our 40s and 50s, And some days are better than others. Some days we respond better than others, right? And I think we've definitely both been blessed with spouses that are very forgiving towards our maladaptive
reactions and responses to things.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. We've definitely been graced with that, and that's probably the reason why those relationships have worked. So this said, vulnerability is at the core of shame and fear, empathy and security, the antidotes to managing shame and fear when being vulnerable.
All right, now you got to read that over again.
Okay.
From the top.
All right. Vulnerability is at the core of shame and fear.
Okay.
Empathy and security are the antidotes for managing shame and fear when being vulnerable. So vulnerability at the core of shame and fear, that definitely makes sense to me, because I used to live a life of shame and fear. I never felt like I was good enough.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Never felt like I was good enough. Never felt like anything that I did was right. Hated myself, right? Like deep hatred. And then fear. I had a lot of fear growing up. And then, what I thought as I moved away from fear, but it wasn't really that I moved away from fear. I just drank until I didn't feel it necessarily anymore. Right? And then what they don't tell you is when you get sober, all these emotions come flooding back.
Yeah, it's a temporary reprieve.
Yeah, temporary for like 5 years.
Well, no, I mean like going out that night, right? Because it's all.
Oh yes, yeah.
And you were talking about, and it's very fascinating why, and you were talking about that earlier when guys will get drunk and then they'll be a little emotional, right?
Yeah.
And there's lots of bro hugs and all this other stuff, right? And why is that? Is we're letting that guard down, and we all have that deep seated need. I mean, it's built into us.
Yep.
And so we're always wanting it, and we're looking for it, and we hit the bottle or whatever else, brings down the inhibitions, right? And all those other things, they're always there. Oh, and they're not getting filled, right? So they're just screaming for focus.
Yeah.
And we get some inhibitions that drop, and these things that aren't being filled are just raw, and they come flooding out, and you can tell it's like, as you talked about earlier, it's, hey, you see it all come out, and it's because it's a response to, you've ripped that pressure valve off, and poof, all the stuff comes out. And some of it you can see now as we're older and wiser, that's really just a cry for help,
Yeah.
right? Or a cry for connection. I don't think it's help so much. And this is where words kind of matter. Words get a little
Sure.
mussy and muddy and fuzzy. And because that's another word, vulnerable. Oh, I need help. Oh, no, but in our culture, we're supposed to never need help,
Yeah.
right? And that is so incorrect. There's very, very few things out there that you don't need. They couldn't be better with help, right?
Yep.
Like, life is not a solo sport. It just isn't.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is we look up to, we make movies about, we write stories about, like, all these things that are like, okay, Band of Brothers. What's it about? It's about war.
Yeah.
Right? But it's these guys who were there, right? And so it's so fascinating that we know viscerally, and we admit it through media, how important this connection with others is. And yet we'll be like, I don't need that, man. I'm strong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about the heroes that we were raised with, like in regards to movies and that kind of stuff, Rambo, right? Rambo did everything on his own. Who else is there? Well, Rocky had some help. Who else?
Yeah, but you always end up with that one strong guy, right?
Yes.
So whether it's Predator,
Yep.
or
John-
Alien,
John Wick, or
the new one, John Wick, right? Great movies, by the way. Had so much fun, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure they had such a blast filming them.
Yeah.
Die Hard, right? It's the solo guy, and we look at that in the real world, and that's not
Realistic.
that's not realistic,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the closest you might get is that's made in popular press now is a sniper. He's not alone,
Yeah.
right? He's got a spotter with him, right? And rear security, and there's other stuff around him. Like, it's still a team sport.
But they don't ever show that in movies. They don't ever show the spotter, right?
Well, it depends, but yeah, a lot of times they don't.
Yeah.
And that's, again, I think, it's funny, you talk about teamwork, and one of the comments you made earlier about vulnerability and knowing who's good at what. I gotta sanitize the story. So in one of the platoons I was in, there was a guy I served with, and he was not a corpsman. He's not a corpsman. Didn't do anything medical, right? And yet, he just had this gift. He could stick a needle to rehydrate, or to give blood or whatever. He could stick a needle with a chem light in his mouth in the back of a helo, leaving an LZ on a dehydrator, like, every single time. So much so that the corpsmen were like, "You do it, just you do it." Like, and it got to be kind of a running gag and a joke, because here's this guy, and he had the gift, man. He was like, "Yeah, sure," and it was just done, and it was okay. But I don't even remember how we learned that this guy had this talent. Probably we were just doing first aid training, and but instead of, like, the corpsmen being upset about it, they're like, "Dude, you got a gift. Here, you do it." Like, just great.
Yeah.
Awesome, right? And, for good or for bad, SEALs being in the press, and it is a team sport, and that's kind of built into you that, hey, you're not doing any of this stuff alone. Like, every activity, the smallest unit, even in BUDS training, is a two-man pair. It's a swim pair, right? So this idea of you're doing it alone, and you're there to help the other guy along if anything goes wrong. I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff that's dangerous, and things happen, and bad stuff is you're there, to help your buddy out. Right?
Yeah.
So this iconic American do it alone thing is a big lie.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to watch the Schwarzenegger commencement speech?
Oh, I didn't. I forgot to watch it.
Okay, yeah. You got to go back and watch that commencement speech, because it's the 17 minutes of "I'm not a self-made man."
Yep.
And he's enumerating all these people that helped him, and that's the big deal. People get keyed into the name or the personality, and that's cool. But there's that whole group of people that got them there.
Absolutely.
And so to go back to your vulnerability thing and life being a team sport, we end up maladapted, and we're like all alone in here.
Yeah.
And then somebody just asks you a simple question. You have this freak out of a response, and it's part of, you might use this against me.
Yeah.
And what I don't want to miss there is, and we've all had those times, is how like catastrophic, sad that is.
Yeah.
That you'd be in a position where you're so hurt and you've been hurt by so many people for so long, your response is, I'm not going to open up to you.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's also important to say, I'm pretty sure when that happened, you hadn't even met your wife to be at the time. You weren't even dating her yet. That was pretty early on when you and I were hanging out. And that was in the whole, did you write your list yet? That's another thing we'll have to unpack later.
Yeah. That was definitely an impactful one.
So I think I can look back at our relationship and see how, as you were growing and developing, and as you were healing, and you're letting go of these maladaptive behaviors, or you're working on them, right? Everybody's got stuff. You're working on your stuff. You're not ignoring your stuff. You're proactively working on your stuff. And you got to this space where all of a sudden you're like, wow, all these monkeys I had on my back are gone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, it's not that they won't come back. I mean, you can easily invite them right back. That's one of the problems, right? Like, once you have that maladaptive brain pathway, it's so easy to fall back into those old habits, right? And I'm sure you can unpack, like, neurologically what's happening there. Mm-hmm. Why is it so easy to fall back?
Well, it depends on behaviors that continue to exist. They exist because we get something from it, right? And so we create neural pathways, and when the way that I think about it is like a road, right? So like I want to say the word caliche, like a caliche road. The more you go down that road or that pathway, the deeper the roots come into it.
Also, like a game trail.
Yes, right. And so it's the same thing with like our brain, is that the myelin sheath becomes thicker the more that we continue to do those behaviors, right? And so even maladaptive behaviors, we still get something from it, right? And so that becomes the pathway that our brain naturally goes, oh, this is what we do, right? And that's the importance of like being able to change a behavior, is that it takes repetition, right? And then the more that we change that and we do that, right, like you start strengthening that neural pathway, and then we no longer, the other road doesn't get as activated as much until something reminds it of that experience, right? And then it goes back to it, right?
And it's still there, so it's still easy to really fall back into it.
And the other thing that came up, so I was thinking about as we were talking about it, so rejection activates a part of your brain that's responsible for pain, right? And so rejection actually activates that same part of your brain that's responsible for feeling like a bone breaking.
Ouch.
It's physically painful for us. We'll avoid rejection at all cost, right? And that's because we're so afraid of how impactful that would be, right? Now, like they do all these different sociological experiments that have proven that, right? That people will just go along with the group because they're so afraid of like, well, I don't want to be pushed away from the group. I don't want to be ostracized, right? Because ostracized, right, means that
you're rejected,
right? And it lowers our chances of survival, right? So if we're in a group, right, back in the old, caveman days, if we're kicked out of that, right, our chances of survival go to zero. And so we had to be a part of that group. And so that's just the way that, God programmed our brain for protection in that way, to be able to react and respond with those things. And so, like, rejection was a big thing for me, right? It was a big reason why I drank, a big reason, like I wouldn't feel that impact as much.
Sure.
And I could push people away before they pushed me away.
Sure. Right. I'll be in control.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to that.
Okay.
Say that thing again about.
All right. Vulnerability is at the core of shame and fear, and empathy and security, the antidotes to managing shame and fear when being vulnerable. So, managing shame and fear when being vulnerable. So, we can't have bravery without vulnerability. Right?
What is your definition of bravery?
Oh gosh. Okay, so when I think about bravery, I always think about like what my old martial arts teacher used to tell me, is that the hero and the coward feel the same fear, right? but the hero has enough bravery and discipline, and what was the other thing you would say? Like basically, they've had enough repetitions to be able to do the thing that the coward's afraid to do, right? And then that makes that person brave, right? Is that they're able to step into that arena that people are afraid to do.
Yeah, there's an important thing there.
Okay.
The hero isn't not afraid. It's not afraid.
Yes.
Right? Fear is real. Fear, we get it for survival and all these other things. Fear is so, and we kind of talk about this. I never wanted to serve with someone that was fearless,
Yeah.
because that's the kind of person that'll get you killed, right? Like,
They're careless.
because they can easily be careless,
Yep.
because they're like, what do I have to worry about?
Yep.
Like, dude, you're not invulnerable. That's not a thing. So the hero and the coward both are fearful.
Yes.
It's one is master of their fear,
Yes.
and one is mastered by their fear, right? And so, and I think they're both habits, by the way. You can practice being brave, and then you will build up the bravery pathway in your brain. It'll be easier to be brave. And I think the more you're a coward or a victim mindset, the more cowardly and victim-y you become, and it'll just continue. And again, they're both pathways that they're like you said earlier, they're skills that can be learned.
Yep.
And it's which one are you feeding? Because it matters.
Yep.
And we know that, right? Especially as guys. Like, we look at people that are fearful or cowardly, and it really turns us off.
Yeah.
Right? It sets us, kind of on edge.
Nobody wants to be that person in the movie.
Not only do you not want to be that person, you don't want to be around that
Yeah.
person, right? And part of that, I think, and this is a good part, is like, I don't want to be that guy, right? Because we know, hey, there's something wrong,
Yeah.
right? And then you get into the idea of shame and all those things. What is the root of shame?
The root of shame.
Yeah. So you
It,
do
I mean,
X, you say X.
I think about
Why
it.
are you shame? Why do you feel shame or not feel shame?
I think of insecurity, and I think of what the message is communicated to you, right? If you're told that it's wrong or that it's bad, right, then it becomes shameful, right? I guess help me unpack it.
Well, had I thought about shame, I would have gone back to watch that Brene Brown video, because it's so good. She talks about shame,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to do it justice at all. We really need to pull that one up and rewatch it again. Part of shame is it's I think it's tied in with you know better, or you think you know better. You shouldn't have done that, so you feel remorse or shame about it. You're like, there's something wrong with that. Now, it can get way out of balance, right? And I think many times, especially when you and I were kids, and unfortunately I see it today, people try to parent their children through shame. Like, I'll just shame them, and shame is painful, so they'll stop doing it.
Yep.
And it's like, man, that's not leading,
Yeah.
right? that is set the example. Don't do the anti-example,
Yep.
right? Like, but with that shame idea, and I think you were starting to unpack that there, I think there's a really important nugget or kernel not to be missed that has to do with, hey, why is this shameful? And it's an evaluation or a judgment that says somebody or some source has told me something. I am now out of alignment with that something, and I know I should be in alignment with it, and therefore I have shame, right? And I think you see this super early, even in kids. Like, boys and girls are different, right? Boys do not pick up Barbie dolls, right? That's not, the whole joke is, if you don't give a kid a gun, he will pick up a stick and make it a gun. He will chew his Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun, right? Like, it does not matter. Boys, we play with guns, right? Because we want to slay dragons. We want to be the hero. Like, that's just built in. That's okay. And so, even when we're playing and we're out roughhouse and we're doing whatever, even as boys, much less young men, if we fail to perform, and we could have, we feel shame.
Yeah.
Because we know we didn't do what we should have done. Now, you got to be super careful in there about the whole should, right? As my therapist would say, don't should on yourself.
Yeah.
And there's a whole thing we should unpack with the term should. Yet at the same time, and I don't have any better words yet, there are certain things that we know we ought to do or ought not to do. So
Yes.
I'll avoid the should word. And when we are out of alignment with those, we feel this pain response. And I believe it is shame, where we're like, I'm out of alignment with where I ought to be. And now I have this pain. And it's almost like it's an internal rejection, right? Like you turned away from what you know to be like the example you should be doing. And so that can be very painful. Now, we've got to be super careful with that and back off and frame something, which is, again, show me your friends, I'll show you your future, right? If you're hanging out with a bunch of rapscallions and that's your life, then your worldview is going to become colored by them, and you're going to struggle with doing things and feeling shame, because the rest of society is going to be like, dude, that's not how you behave, right? Like there are certain things that are held up in the world as to good and right and true and just and all that stuff.
Yep.
So as we deviate from those norms, we realize, hey, man, I'm not where I'm supposed to be, and then we get that uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
That is shame. And I think of it as as we talked about this a little bit last time, as a husband and as a dad, right? You have these bad dad moments, and you're like, oh my goodness, right? And I felt shame,
Yeah.
absolutely, and I think it was correct and just and right that I felt shame over those. That was shameful behavior. So I owned it. We processed through it, whatever. But shame was the right response because of what I had done.
Yes. Yeah, because the behavior didn't align with what you know you should do.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is to be able to recognize, like, the emotions that we have, we're having them for a reason. How not to be ruled by them is the important part, right? Is because I used to feel immense shame about things, but I just wouldn't face it, right? Like, I'd cut people out of my life versus feeling shame,
Sure.
right? I did bad things, right? And it's like, oh, okay, well, if I don't ever see this person again, well, then I don't have to face consequences, right? Or denial, right? We're just lying, right? Just being devious of just saying, well, no, I didn't do it,
Yeah.
right?
And who are you lying to?
Oh, just myself.
Right.
Right.
But that's a key, right? When we go back to all these things, I don't have to see them again. I don't have to do this. You're avoiding.
Yes.
And avoidance does work.
Works.
Right? To a point.
Yes.
But the underlying issue is still there.
Yeah.
Right? So I was thinking in the 12-step program, isn't one of the steps that you have to go back and you apologize to people?
Yes. Yeah. You have to
Right.
make amends.
Make amends. Okay. That means you got to own it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you can't make a real amend unless you own it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you got to go through that hard work, that processing, that, okay, that's my junk, that's my stuff. I'm going to deal with it. And I can't honestly apologize to someone if I haven't owned my thing,
Yeah.
whatever it is. And as you talked about, I think there can be at the times this really weird juxtaposition where we suffer internal rejection, right? Like, wait a minute, I know that was wrong, but if I face it, I'm going to have to admit that it was wrong. So I have to like internally reject myself. That's really painful, right? Like there gets to be this very bizarre little nexus of pain inside because, yeah, we're not doing the right thing.
Yeah. But I feel like once you work through that and you learn how good accountability feels, for me, that was transformative, right?
Yes.
Like recognizing, like, I can take ownership of my stuff. And then when you're around healthy people, right, and they don't continue to beat you up about, that you made a mistake, that was completely different.
Well,
Or they didn't use it against you.
they don't use it against you,
Yep.
and really good, healthy friends will not let you continue to beat yourself up,
Yeah.
right? If this is if you want to let it go, and they're smack you upside the head, and you're like, dude, get over it, move on,
Yep.
right? Like, I need you in the game, and while you're over here wallowing in your own self-pity, you're not in the game. Process your stuff, then set it down and move, right? Because we got stuff to do, and I think that's one of those really key things about good friendships, healthy friendships, is, again, and as you just said, when you're around the right kind of people, when you surround yourself with nobody's perfect, but
Yep.
you have healthy people that are trying to follow healthy habits, right? It's what is their trajectory, and you put those people together, then they're assisting one another, helping one another, right?
Yep.
And again, it's a team sport. And when we remember that and we're humble enough and vulnerable enough to be like, dude, I'm not perfect, right? Like, hey, I need help and I need you to hold me accountable.
Yeah.
There's probably a whole nother podcast we get into with the lack of a true accountability in our society today, and that people aren't being vulnerable, so they're not telling people what's going on, and then they are not in lack of vulnerability and lack of trust. Then you have no accountability because there's no real foundation there, and you have all these self-destructive behaviors, drugs, porn, you name it, right?
Yep.
All these things, and what's interesting, catastrophic about it is some of the brain studies that are coming about online, whether it's social media, porn, whatever. And it's like, dude, it's triggering the same spots in your brain as cocaine.
Yep.
Okay, well, we can show that now. I think it's on an fMRI where they're looking at it in real time. And they're like, oh, we now understand what's going on. And yet you'll go to people and you'll be like, that's a really destructive behavior to yourself. And they're like, no, man, I'm good. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I got my porn under control. What?
Yeah.
Like, if you really knew what was going on in your brain, you wouldn't say that. You would realize, I'm sorry, that that's a false statement. That's like saying, dude, I got my crack habit under control.
Well, and you'll hear people say that kind of stuff because have you read Dopamine Nation? Okay. So I can't remember her name. I'm really bad about names. So Dopamine Nation, we talked about it at the last retreat that we did in January. The way I love the way that she explained it. So it was like, you had the pleasure center on one side, right? And then you had like pain on the other side. And it was like a teeter-totter. And so she explained like, these maladaptive things that trigger massive amounts of dopamine, risky sex, drugs, alcohol, pornography, right? That you get such an abundance of dopamine, that your brain is willing to risk whatever it needs to be able to like feel that feeling again, right? And then what happens is when you start to go through the withdrawal process, right, then the teeter-totter starts to switch. You start to feel the discomfort, that pain again, right? Well, then the antidote, right, is the massive amounts of dopamine, so let's switch it back again. The problem is that people, they start to develop a tolerance. So now you have to have more consumption of it, more risky behavior. You have to have more alcohol, whatever it is. And now that teeter-totter is no longer balancing itself out, right? And unfortunately, sometimes you live in this constant state of pain, right? And then you're using more and more and more, and you're having to find other things to bring in because of that, right? And so she explains, like, we want to have a healthy relationship with it because dopamine isn't necessarily a bad thing because dopamine creates motivation for us, right? So our ancestors, there's an apple on that mountain over there. Okay, well, my brain creates dopamine. I start walking up that mountain because I want to go get whatever it is, right? There's a fish I want to go catch.
Yeah, let's
right?
be honest.
Yes.
Let's bring it real. Right?
There's an elk on top of that mountain, right? That creates that dopamine, and I'm going to risk everything in order to be able to go get it, right?
You're going to embrace that suck.
I'm going to embrace the suck, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make those things happen, right? But where it becomes maladaptive, right, is when it starts affecting our lives in negative ways, right? And so it did a great job as far as explaining those things, and it really helped put things in perspective for me, right? Because it was like, I didn't do AA when I quit drinking, like they always say, you have to hit rock bottom. I hit tons of rock bottoms, right? I just hit that rock bottom that made me finally go like, okay, I'm going to give it a break. And my original goal was I was going to quit for a year.
Yeah.
And then I hit a year, and it was like, would it make sense to drink to celebrate a year of sobriety? So maybe I'll give it 2 years, right? But I never wanted to say I was going to give it up because I didn't want to be a quitter.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Because I hated the feeling of being a hypocrite, right? So I never wanted to tell people I was giving up drinking, right? Because then if I went back to drinking, well then, I lied about it.
So that is not my story. I'm on a different. I'm on a different path than you are.
Yeah.
No, mine was part of coming to Christ, and there's people that can drink in the Bible, and there's drinking the Bible and water to wine and all that stuff.
Mhm.
That's right. That's fine. For me, it was no.
Yeah.
It is just I can't handle it.
I can't
and so
either.
I can tell you, no, I can't handle it.
Yep.
Like well, you could just have one. No, really, I can't. Like,
Yeah.
I'm weak. No, the answer is no. And I laugh. I'm sure some of the guys that I served with would back that up, even though it's been decades. They'd
Yeah.
be like, yeah, no, that's liquid stupidity for him. Do not let him have any. So for me, it was part of the whole, Lord, deliver me from this kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And it was. And it's like, okay, great. Awesome. And people were like, oh, you're so strong. And I'm like, well, no, not really. Like, the Lord's strong, not me. But the other thing is, and people don't get this, is, okay, I'm 20 plus years sober.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. And I haven't had a drink. No, but I have some weird things that happen. I can't tell you the number of dreams where I've drank, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I'm drinking. And then I'll wake up or something.
Do you
So
feel do you feel guilty?
oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm letting people down.
Yeah.
I'm doing, so they're almost like nightmares.
Yeah.
And they're usually a couple times a year.
Yep.
So it's not that it's not there. And then it's also like, oh, I've never wanted to drink again. Oh, no, that is not true at
Yeah.
all, man. There's a lot of days where I'm like, oh, dude, a good stiff drink right now would be awesome.
Yep.
And I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm weak. I can't do it. I know I can't do it. That's my jam, right? There's other people that don't have a problem with it. Awesome. Rock on, man. So this goes back to that vulnerability piece. I was thinking about something a friend of mine, I learned from him. It was from his grandfather, country wisdom. He says, part of being smart is knowing what you're dumb at. I remember the first time I heard that, I'm like, wait, what? Part of being smart is knowing what you're dumb at. And this was decades ago. And I'm like, man, that is some of the best, down-to-earth country wisdom I know.
It
And
made sense to me right away.
yeah, wow, okay, I'm dumb at this. Like, I need to avoid it at all costs, do whatever. Like, no. And it's also having the humility, the vulnerability to be like,
Yeah.
no, I'm good with that. Like, I can't do that. I'm okay, right? At 150 pounds and 5'6", not going to play pro sports, right?
Yep.
Like, that's not making me on baseball, football, basketball. Like, not going to happen. Okay, I'm good with that. Like, and this goes back into what you were starting with on seeing someone of any age who is comfortable with who they are, and they have this peace about them. They have
Yep.
this presence, right? Because they know what they are, and they also know what they aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're okay with, I'm okay with who I am, and I'm okay with who I'm not. And so they don't get bothered by many of these things that happen around them because they don't should on themselves.
Yeah.
They're not like, well, I should be 6'2" and 200 pounds so I can play football. No, that's not my genetics, man. Never gonna happen.
Yep.
Okay, so that and it's fascinating when we see people like that, and especially at a young age when they're already comfortable with who they are,
Yeah.
and then there's a great power in that because they have peace. And when we go back to that vulnerability piece that you were talking about, it's so important. And we worked hard to teach our kids this, and I think you are on your path teaching your daughter as well. Hey, this is who you are. And none of us is perfect, but this is who you are.
Yeah.
And when they grok that and they grasp it and they internalize it, and they're like, yeah, this is who I am, and then they kind of blossom, and then this other stuff happens around them, and they're like, doesn't even bother me,
Yeah.
right? Because they don't struggle with an unmet expectation because they know what to expect of themselves.
Yeah. And that's people ask me, what was the thing that helped transform my life, right? Like how did I go to a place of love, really self-destructive to being where I'm at now where, I'd say majority of the time I feel pretty happy. Like, I have bad moments. I don't necessarily have bad days, right? And I'm able to switch myself out of those types of things, and the pivotal parts was developing a relationship with God and then learning to love myself, right? Learning to love myself is critical, right? Because if I never learned to love myself, I would have never respected myself enough to make any type of changes, and I would have never done anything different. And I don't think you can love other people if you do not love yourself.
Concur.
Right.
And I think that's foundational truth that so many people miss.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go back to the whole, you got stuff,
Yes.
right? And if I got a bunch of baggage and I don't deal with it, it's going to get in between my relationship with you.
Yeah.
Just straight up. It doesn't matter what our relationship is, friends, bros, hunting buddies, fishing, whatever, my spouse. If I don't deal with my stuff, it's always going to be on me, and therefore it's going to impact my relationship with that person.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't not. People are like, "Oh no, I'm just taking care of this." Like, no, you're not. Like, you can't not have it impact the rest of your life. So, I've got a good friend, and I know he has struggled with a lot of things, and he's a guy with such an amazing heart, and I love him to death, and I can see at times he struggles with loving himself,
Mm-hmm.
and yet so many people I know that know him think the world of him. Now, he's not perfect.
Yeah.
Nobody's perfect, right? But you can see the goodness in his heart, and and he really does work hard to love others. And it's like, man, if you would love yourself and get the inner peace from self-love that
Yep.
you are working and it's like, you can look at him and be like, I can see you're working so hard to love others because you don't love yourself,
Yep.
right? You're like overcompensating. And it's painful. It's painful to watch, yet it's real.
Yeah.
And again, until they work on themselves, right? This is why it's so important to work on your own stuff.
Yep.
Nobody can do it for you, right? Nobody can do your homework for you,
No.
right? Nobody can do the reps or run the miles or recover the surgeries,
Yep.
right? You got to do the work yourself, and if you don't, it's always going to be there.
Yeah, and it goes back to like what we talked about last week. So people are so avoidant of discomfort,
Yeah.
right? That I'm not going to step into that, right? So what I need is I'll jump into another relationship, right? Or drugs, alcohol, all the other things, all the gambit of things that don't allow us to be able to feel what we're feeling.
Yeah, any external stimuli, so I don't have to be alone with
myself. Yeah.
right? And I think about something we talked about last week on taking people out and taking their phone away and making them be alone.
Yeah.
In the wild, and they're like, and really, it's they don't want to be alone with themselves. And I remember that. I remember as a young man being in that position and being where I was looking for and wanting that external stimuli, not understanding why or what, and being in that place where it was like, I'm so lonely. Yeah, you're so lonely because you're not dealing with your own junk. Dude.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that you're alone. It's you built like this brick wall around yourself. Like, the rest of the world's going on all around you, and you're missing it because you haven't dealt with your junk. Like,
Yeah.
you're behind this wall of baggage.
Even when we've dealt with our junk and then we get triggered by it, is the interesting things. I've got kind of a funny story about it. So I had pulled a tag for I can't remember what district it was, but it was in here in Montana to go hunt mule deer.
Okay.
And Danielle was supposed to go with me, and this is when she was still doing the drone work, and we were supposed to go out camping for one weekend and everything, and I'd got all the stuff together, and she told me when it was coming around, she was like, I'm just kind of tired. I think I just want to sit around the weekend and you can go, right? But like, I don't really want to go be uncomfortable and, hike and camp outside and all that kind of stuff. Instead of me communicating, like, I really want you to go with me, just whatever. I started packing all my stuff up and everything. And, like, she's like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Right? And it's like, you don't look fine. And I'm like, no, I'm fine, right? I'm just going to go do this thing by myself. You don't care if I get ate by a grizzly bear. And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, how did we go from, that to this? And, I storm off, and I don't even think I said goodbye. I think I just ended up just leaving.
Finest moments.
Right. Oh yeah. This was a good one. Right. And then she's, asking me like, what's going on for you? Right. And it wasn't until I was driving that I really thought about it. And it was that I really wanted her to go with me. I really wanted to have this experience. Right. But I couldn't communicate what my needs were, what my wants were vulnerably. Right. Like, I was so afraid of that. And so what I just did is I just got reactive, and I tried to use shame. right? To motivate her to pack her stuff to want to come with me.
Yeah, because that always works
Oh
so
yeah,
well,
right.
right?
Like why would she not want to be stuck in a tent with me for the next 3 days when I'm shaming her right off the rip?
Right.
Right.
Nice.
But I recognize like, oh, okay, when I have these visceral reactions and I start going into that shame, I need to hit the brakes on that. Right.
Yeah. Um, let's actually dial back slightly. You
Medicine
ready?
time.
Is it medicine time? All right. Let's dial back slightly.
Okay.
And you had a response,
Yes.
right? You were mad.
I had a reaction.
You had a reaction.
Yes.
And what was the driver of that reaction?
Discomfort.
But what had made you discomfortable? She said no, and that made you upset.
Yeah.
And I think the part there to recognize is you had an expectation.
Mhm.
She didn't meet your expectation.
No.
And it was all downhill from there.
Yes.
Right? So this gets really to the root, and I learned a lot on expectation management. And we've got to be super careful with it because we make expectations of ourselves,
Yes.
which we don't even acknowledge. They're not tacit, or they're tacit, they're not explicit, right? And we're just like, well, I should do this. Why? That's the whole don't should yourself,
Yeah.
right? You have this expectation, and it's like, where did that even come from? You have this expectation with other people, and you may or not have even
Clearly communicated.
communicated
Yeah.
it to that other person, right? So expectation management is like a vital survival skill.
Yep.
And recognizing what is the expectation in the first place, and then have you communicated the expectation? But even before you get to communicating it, it's evaluating the expectation and saying, okay, I have an expectation. Well, wait, evaluate.
Yeah.
Is this a reasonable expectation? Is this a wise expectation? Is this a good expectation?
Yeah.
And having that moment of self-reflection internally, even with yourself, to be like, oh, I have this expectation that, I'm going to do whatever. And it's like, well, is that, you go through that whole laundry list. Is that reasonable, good, wise, whatever? And then you're like, wait, oh, maybe that's an unreasonable expectation. Maybe I should just evaluate the expectation and not, it's okay that the other person said no, because it was an unreasonable expectation anyway.
Yeah.
Or I was being callous or not thinking about like, okay, more than once with my wife, we're hard charging, we're guys, we want to go out and do stuff. And as we're getting older, we still want to go slay dragons, darn it. And, our wives are very tolerant of us at times, but like, that's not always their idea of a good time, right? Like they want to, do other things. And I
Yeah.
think that they humor us at times, but there's a reason why, sometimes Michelle will look at me and be like, you need guy time. Bye-bye. like go out with Sean.
Yeah.
Go, right? And it's because those relationships are different.
Yeah.
And that's that expectation piece. Like, hey, maybe the better expectation was take a hunting buddy, not your wife.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe that, I didn't even think about that, right? Or whatever. And so when we taught this to our kids actually early on is, hey, why are you mad? And they're like, what? Well, so-and-so did, but my sister hit me. Okay, but why are you mad? Well, because she hit me. No, but why does that make you mad?
Yeah.
And you have to get to the whole, because she's not supposed to hit me. Oh, so you had an expectation to not be hit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and she hit you. So you have an unmet expectation. And then it was like, oh, there's that expectation thing. And it was like this simple way to get them at a young age to start understanding the power of expectations
Yeah.
and why it's so vital that you communicate.
Yep.
And especially with kids, it's bad enough as adults. They're not necessarily the best with words or fully formulating things. And it's like, okay, you're upset. Why? What was your expectation? And they're like, well, I expected you to do whatever. We're going to, we have daughters, so play Disney's Princess or whatever, We're going to watch Little Mermaid. You're like, oh, okay, now I know what your expectation was, and you're upset because that expectation wasn't met.
Yeah.
And it was, life-altering, like,
Yeah. Well, that unmet need.
Yeah.
Right. That unmet need that was underneath all of those things. Right. And I think we hit on it a little bit last week when we were talking about the angry iceberg. Right. Like that anger, that secondary emotion protects us and keeps us safe. but underneath that is all those way more vulnerable emotions that we were feeling, right? And that's what I was feeling, is I was feeling that sense of rejection, right? I was feeling that sense of like not feeling prioritized, or like that she wanted to spend time with me, right? And those types of things, which that was so far from the truth, right? She'd just been working and she didn't want to be uncomfortable out in the woods, right? And so, and I guarantee I didn't make a clear expectation in regards to, I really, really, really want you to do this thing with me this weekend, right? Because anytime I have expressed those things, more often than not, that need is met.
Yeah, and I think the guys, especially, I know I have an incredible struggle, ongoing, 20 plus years of marriage. I have a very, very difficult time expressing those kind of desires
Yeah,
to my wife, because it's the whole, like we talked about last week, we're always on duty. We're always husband. We're always dad. We're a provider. We're a protector, right? And so it's challenging to be vulnerable to your spouse, to be like, hey, this one's really important to me,
yeah,
right? And like you said, why don't we do it? We're fear of rejection.
yeah.
Well, it's not going to work so well if you don't expose it in the first place.
It's gonna be worse.
Oh, yeah, okay, right? So reminding ourselves of, hey, cowboy up, try to get the expectation out. Get it out of your brain. Try to verbalize it, right? And usually she's pretty graceful. When I'm like, hey, I'm trying to work through this thing. I really, don't get mad at me, right? We have a phrase in our house. Give me an umbrella of grace. Give me an umbrella of grace as I try to unpack this. I don't really have the words.
I like that.
And then it's like, okay, we're going to get through this little piece. It's like, I'm not attacking you. I'm not doing what, no, give me an umbrella of grace. I'm trying to work on this thing. And it's important as a husband, as a spouse, it's important that I try to communicate. So I'm going to try. This is going to be a train wreck.
Yeah.
So don't hammer me, because I know it's a train wreck. But the right thing to do is still to try.
I like that. I'm gonna steal that one.
Totally.
Yeah. No, that's good, because I think a lot of times, when I'm struggling to communicate something, I get even more frustrated with it, and so I just shut down, right? Or I just don't. My natural tendency, I think, is avoidance, where it just goes, no, I don't want to go towards that thing. But what it said on the back of my shirt when I did my cage fight, everything you want is on the other side of fear.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the reason why I put it on there, is because, that was one of the more vulnerable things that I had done, because there was so many things that led up to that, to make that thing like actually work out, where I had, tried so many different times to have that experience to fight, and had broken bones, car accidents, so many different things, right? And my alcoholism. My alcoholism was the number one thing that prevented me from doing that for so long, and the fear of losing, right? Fear of losing was huge. So, yeah.
And then you realize, as you get it with good coaching, back down the straight blast, it was one of the best things I can remember. Travis, when he was working with my kids, when they were down there as little kids, and he looks right at everybody and he says, "You learn more from losing than you do from winning. It's important that you lose." And the kids are like, "What?" Like, and they're trying to be all tough and whatever. And then it was like, as a parent, you're sitting there hearing this, and you're like, "Dude, this is great wisdom that you are speaking over my children." And he did such a fabulous job, because he would take and he would put people in to make sure they lost. Right? He would work it through practice to make sure. It doesn't matter how much of a rock star you are. Like we talked about last week, there's always somebody bigger and badder and better. And a good training partner you'll lose, but it'll be instructive, it won't just be a suck fest, right? It's like, no, okay, what could you have done better? How can you improve, right? And it's that idea that, and I think this is part of what we talked about a little bit last week with iron sharpening iron. It doesn't always have to be sparks, right? It could be a file on an axe, right? You're just working it to make it sharper, Great. That idea of being intentional, and this goes to the fear and the vulnerability. If you have really good, strong relationships, then you should be intentionally entering into those baggage areas, those painful areas, that you should be embracing your own emotional suck, so that you don't have to worry about that stuff, and it's not in between you, and you can get healthier.
Yeah.
I can remember, had a bunch of stuff had happened to me, whatever, or I'd done, or all these things. I'm dating my wife. I think we proposed. I don't think we were married yet. And I think before we got married, I was like, look, I got all this stuff in my past. I want you to know about it. I don't want any time somebody tells you this that you didn't know that this was in my past.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to tell you all my dirty little secrets. Here's my closet. Love me or hate me, here it is. But before you say I do, I want you to know everything.
Yeah.
And I went through, and I was like, oh man. And I went through everything I could think of. And she's like, okay. And it was like, really? And she's like, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay.
That's it.
That's it. You're just going to love me for who I am.
Yeah.
And she's like, that was before. That's not who you are today, kind of a thing.
That's such a healthy perspective.
And it was like, wow, you're just loving me for who I am.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I have nothing to fear. You have seen every skeleton in my closet.
Yeah.
Like, we're good.
Yeah.
Talk about empowering. I mean, like, every day I can get up and be like, she knows the absolute worst of me.
Yeah.
Awesome. And she loves me anyway. Dude, how many dragons will I kill? Right? Like, I will be fearless slaying dragons now because I know when I get back to the castle, she's got my back.
Yeah.
And yeah, empowering. So empowering. Incredibly empowering. Because I don't have to worry about that it's like halvesies or maybes or anything. Like, no, I do and I will. Like for real.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Great. So much relieved as a guy knowing that here's my spouse, my helpmeet, who really is, embodying, living what she said she would do.
Yeah. Accepting you unconditionally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had this exact same conversation with Danielle, and that's how I knew, like, that this relationship was the relationship I wanted to be in forever.
Yeah.
Was, it was like, I used to not be a good person, right? And it was just like, I didn't like who I was. I didn't like myself to the point that, like, I tried to end myself, right? So, like, I, have a lot of stuff to own, right? And I told her, anything you want to know, I'm happy to share it with you, right? Like, I will be 100% transparent, right? And I felt like I was able to do that with her because I trusted her, right? And she really honestly didn't have a lot of questions, and the few things that she did ask, I was honest with her about it, and she's never used it against me once.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing to realize is if either of our spouses were to take anything from our past and try to use it against us,
Yeah.
that would be like this giant red flag that there's other problems going on. It would be out of character for either one of them, right? Like, wait a minute. If you're attacking me with a skeleton in my closet, there's something deeper going on here.
Yeah.
It's probably not even about me, right? Like, okay, let's figure out what's happening here. Yeah, you and I have both been blessed with incredible women, and I think that's actually one of the things that helps us both be good husbands and fathers.
Oh, yeah.
Is that we have these incredible women in our lives.
Yeah. I know it grew me as an individual. I mean, I did so much work individually, and then, we grew so much as a couple, and we did couples therapy, right? We did that, I think before we got married, and it was pivotal for us, and yeah, that transformed our relationship to a totally different level of really learning how to be able to communicate, like, our needs, be vulnerable, recognize, like, the spots where we did not communicate well, right? And learning how to emotionally regulate and communicate way more effectively.
Well, and so you were talking about emotional regulation. It's also having a shared vocabulary. It's having a shared tool set. So when you're like, I'm struggling with this and I'm doing a breathing exercise, the other person's like, you're doing what? Like, now they're like, oh, got it. You're just going to do a box breathe. Got it. You're going to cool off. And now I know, right? It's not this unknown.
Yeah.
And I think that's really vital, is that shared framework. Whatever the framework is, it kind of doesn't matter. It's the idea of, oh, I'm not in this alone. I know what you're talking about. Oh, I can handle whatever it is, because we actually are communicating. It's not an unknown language. And that's why I think it's so vital, not only for individual therapy stuff, but also for couples therapy, right? Go at least do a few sessions so you can build a few tools.
Yeah.
Premarital counseling, good premarital counseling, I think gives you some of that baseline, and then start reading some books so you have a shared, people will be like, oh man, you have this great marriage. I'm like, yes, I do. I have a rock star marriage. I don't know anyone that has a better marriage than I do. I have lived, especially with as bad as my past was, I have this phenomenal marriage. One of the things that I credit with it is strong faith, and we're walking together with the Lord. The other one, though, is we're proactive. Like, we weed the garden, right? We practice vulnerability with each other.
Yeah.
And then we do things like homework together. Like we read books, and then we're like, hey, how does, some of the foundational books. First one, 5 love languages.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's not that it's the ultimate treatise on how people work. It's a shared framework, and you can go, oh, this is what's important to you, and that's not so important to you. Got it.
Yeah.
Good, right? Like, is it worth reading the book? Absolutely. Can you get what you need out of the book in 30 minutes? Yes. Also true, right? And then the recognition that those things change over time, right? Like when we had kids and there were diapers and all this, like certain priorities are going on in the household. Her love language is slightly changed, right? Because life circumstances and things that are going on, and okay, great. But having that framework to be like, oh, okay, there's 5 things now. I bet that's really important right now. Go do it, whether you get recognized for it or not. And 9 times out of 10, it would be like, hey, thanks for whatever, because it really filled a need that I had. Hey, awesome, happy to do it, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're just like, I won, right? You're like, going back to last week, we just want to win. Okay, whatever winning is, we want to win. Give me the tools to win. Hey, here's 5 tools. Like now I can, that's the one I need to do to win right now. I will go do that. Awesome, winning. And, your spouse is happy. So 5 love languages is huge for us. The other one, definitely by far, I would say is Wild at Heart and Captivating.
Yep.
Wild at Heart, really spoke to me, helped me understand a lot of what was going on in my head. It came out right as I became Christian. As soon as I was dating Michelle, hey, read this book. And it was fascinating, having never had sisters or anything and not having a great relationship with my mom. She reads the book and she'd be like, is that right? And I'm like,
are you really like this?
I'm like, oh, that's exactly what's going on in my head.
Yeah.
I'm not that eloquent. I mean, I couldn't have written it, but I can tell you, that resonates. And she'd be like, I had no idea. And I'm like, really? Yeah, that's it, man. Like, I'm an open book. Like, this is the manual.
Yeah.
And then when he co-wrote Captivating with his wife, and I read it, and I'm like, is this right? And she's like, oh, yeah. And people can laugh about this, but the truth is, I have 3 great daughters. And mad props and credit to John and Stacey Eldridge, because in reading Captivating and understanding a woman's heart, it helped reduce my bad dad moments with daughters, because I don't know. I never had sisters. I didn't know any of this stuff. And I'm like, why are you crying? Like, they just cry. And I'm like, what is going on? And I was like, chat back. Oh, okay. Yeah, I got it, right? Like, this is okay, right? But because we want to win and we're protectors, like, the child is crying. Something is wrong.
I got to fix it.
I have to fix it. And sometimes it's like, nope, there's no fixing it. They just need to cry it out.
Yeah.
They have to what? Right? Like, as a boy, you're like, what do you mean cry it out? I don't understand this. Okay, whatever, man, right? And other things. Had I not read Captivating, I would not have understood the number of weddings that transpired in my house the first 10 years of my children's lives. Like, every week somebody was getting married, and the booby prize was who had to be the groom, because all the girls wanted to be the bride, right? And it was like, I didn't know this was a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, this is really a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, now I know that, right? Like, never experienced this before. Never had sisters.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because there was things in Danielle, like, she is usually so flexible, but when it came to the wedding, that was the one of the few times where I saw where she was like not wanting to budge on things, where she was like, I really, really want this.
Yeah.
Right. And she had told me, she's like, I wasn't the kid that fantasized a lot about getting married. She actually never thought she was going to get married. right? And then, but for this, it was really important. And then when I read the book, it was like, oh, okay, well, it makes sense now why this was so important to her,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, I mean, the way that we are in our relationship is I always just want to give her everything that she wants. She doesn't ever ask for anything really unreasonable, which makes it so much easier for me.
Oh, well, yeah, this speaks to the line of a woman who your wife is,
Mm.
right? And Michelle is very much in that same vein on um, they are low maintenance women.
Yep.
Like they are not only not high maintenance, but they're very reasonable
Yep.
and um, in their demands and demands that unfortunately in our materialistic world, people think it's like whatever wealth and riches. It's also being reasonable in time allocation and
Yeah.
attention, right? Like, hey, we have to go out and earn a living, right? And so um, that it's not the you're going to spend every waking moment with me kind of a thing. No, that wouldn't be healthy,
Yeah.
right? Yet we can laugh when we see those or cry when we see those characters portrayed in movies or books or whatever else. And um, both of our wives are in these wonderful women who are uh, they struggle with their own stuff, absolutely. At the same time, I mean, they're really showing up,
Yeah.
like with their cleats on for the marriage. And what's so interesting is statistically, we're terrible. I come from a broken home. She comes from a broken home. So statistically, we know we're going to have this, whatever. By the grace of God, we have this awesome marriage. Um, you know, you have you're a broken home. Danielle's a broken home, right?
Hmm.
And yet, you guys are looking at me and you're like, no, like that's not going to be us,
Yeah.
right? Um, and I think it's that being intentional and recognizing all the wreckage that's there
Yeah.
and looking at it and saying, I know what I want, but I also know what I don't
Yeah.
want. And being careful, but being intentional, right? This is the vulnerability thing. Sitting down and being like, okay, this is what I want and this is what I don't want. And then sharing that vision, making sure you're in alignment with your spouse
Hmm.
on, hey, do we agree on what we're aiming for or not aiming for? I think of some of the horror stories I've heard about the challenges with parenting, where parents have two different ideas,
Yeah.
right? Mom and dad have different views of the world. They're not shared, and then you get this really um, terribly painful environment for the child
Yep.
because they're getting mixed messages,
Yep.
and it puts them in an unwinnable situation because the parents don't have their stuff together.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you have a responsibility. I'm not saying you have to be in lockstep and you have to agree, but you do have to present a holistic picture to the child.
Yeah.
Like that's just not fair to the child in the way that you're treating them. You all, and Michelle and I had a big deal with this when we first got married. We don't always agree about everything. We don't disagree with each other in front of the children.
Yeah.
We cannot disagree or we cannot agree about something. That's okay. We'll take it offline. We'll sort it out, but we'll provide a united front to the children always. And it's not just because, for us, it's also for the kids. Otherwise, it's terribly confusing. And as they're growing up and forming and all this, they don't have the tools or the strength or anything to deal with this messed up mix of the adult world.
Yeah.
People thinking that children are really just little adults. That couldn't be further from
No.
the truth.
No. I mean, yeah, and that they know exactly what they need and they want. No, that's a, and then when they figure out how to be able to manipulate those things, I think kids are just trying to get their needs met, right?
Yeah.
And so, the drama triangle, when I learned that when at my work was a pretty critical thing where, the kid plays the victim, the mom typically plays the rescuer, right? And then the dad is the persecutor on the outside, right? And so the way it typically plays out is the victim goes to the rescuer, right? And I'm trying to avoid this person because they're trying to bring this rule down or whatever it is. I'm not getting my needs or met or whatever. And then they team up together and the other person feels on the outside. They get angry, resentful, and then they shut down.
Sure.
Right. And then now your family system has fallen apart. right? And then the kid, is just basically playing the other person to be able to get whatever it is that they want.
Yeah. My kids all did the play mom against dad.
Yeah.
And we told them, don't ever do this.
Yep.
And one of them in particular tried it a couple of times. And as an adult now, she will tell you, yeah, that was a bad idea.
Yeah.
That was a bad idea. And it was the whole, and I tell my kids this, and when they were little, they didn't understand it. But it was really an important lesson. It's very brutal at the same time. And it was like, your mom is more important than you. And as a kid, they're like, what? And I'm like, I chose her. I had you. And they're like, what is this? Right? And they don't, they're not understanding. I'm like, your mom is more important to me than you are. And it was really framing here's the chain of command, right?
Yeah.
Here's the hierarchy. Let it never be misunderstood. I will always side with your mom over you. Mm-hmm. Don't ever try to do anything against mom, or I will bring the hammer. Mm-hmm. And now, as they're young ladies, they're like, holy cow, we see the strength in that. That is awesome. We want that. And it's the whole point that my wife would always feel protected. She never had to worry about having her back. Mm-hmm. And again, no matter what it was, even if we disagree, we'll do that offline. But I'm never, ever, ever going to let the kids, buck up against that system.
Yeah. Because
that's not where, that's very bad, actually, to let them get in there. And I think about some of the tragedies. You have these people, and unfortunately, it's getting to be a trope. It's so common. The kids leave the house, and mom and dad get divorced.
Yeah.
And it's, well, we just grew apart. And it's like, what do you mean you just grew apart? Well, we did everything for the kids. Well, that was your fail.
Yeah.
You didn't say, I do and I will to the children. You said it to your spouse. The focus of your marriage should be your spouse. Then things work. The kids will take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. Like, it really is kind of surprising. And then some of the research that's come out that talks about if the kids, regardless of what else is going on in the world, if the kids see a strong mom and dad relationship, they feel comfortable and safe.
That's what creates safety and security for them.
Yeah, unpack that.
Yeah. Well, so you have the different attachment theories, right? Or the different attachments, right? So you have anxious, you have secure, you have the hybrid, and then that was all of them, right?
I don't know.
Okay. Yep. So when kids are raised in an environment where they feel safety and security, right? That is how they show up in their relationships. When they see two people that are able to navigate, their relationship in a healthy way, right? That's how they're going to show up in their relationships, because that's what's being modeled for them.
Okay.
The interesting thing that I heard recently, as far as like statistics wise, this is the one that kind of blew me away, is if you had to guess percentage wise, how much would you have to guess that you'd have to show up in a relationship to have a secure relationship? Like, would it be 100%, 90%? Like, what would you guess?
I don't know. I'd guess like 75%.
It was like 60%.
Wow. That gives a lot of grace.
That's a lot of grace.
That's a lot of grace.
For me, I was like, oh, man. Whew.
There's hope.
Yeah, I was like, I can mess up like majority of the time. But no, it gave me the sense of like, okay, because I thought my batting average needed to be like 90, right? 99% of the time. But when I did this training, it was explaining that no, if you show up 60% of the time in a secure way, right, then you'll develop a secure relationship.
Wow.
Yeah, which put things very much in perspective that the people, their relationships are falling apart. They're not even showing up 60% of the time, right? Like that was the sad part for me.
You know, that gets into the. Have you heard the whole marriage math thing?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so I'm going to think about how this was put. All right, so in Genesis, God tells Adam and Eve what? Be fruitful and
multiply.
Okay, not add. Interesting. Be fruitful and multiply. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is the strange thing with math. All right. And it says 1 and 1 become
1.
1.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, is that addition or multiplication? 1 plus 1 or 1 times 1 is 1.
Mm-hmm.
It's 1 times 1. Okay, so we're back to multiplication again. So be fruitful, multiply. Man and wife will cling together and become one. Okay. So if you show up and you're less than yourself, if you don't bring your whole game,
Yeah.
and she doesn't bring her whole game, when you bring them together, what happens?
You end up 50%. Yeah.
It goes worse, right? So if I only show up at 50% and she shows up with 50%, when you do 50% times 50%, what do you get? It's 25%.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a terrible curve,
Yeah.
right? And going in the wrong direction. So the beauty there is, and grace thankfully fills in that gap that's missing, right?
Yeah.
But when you're intentional and you're showing up and you're doing the reps, right? You're being there and she's being there and grace is filling in the gap. That's 1 times 1, you're 1. And it's solid.
Yeah.
And you end up with these rock star marriages like we have. They're not perfect, no, but they're awesome.
Yeah.
Right? And it only works because she brings her A game, you bring your A game, and you leave space and fill that gap in with grace with each other. And then, hey, man, 1 times 1 is 1. We're killing this thing.
Yeah.
And you are. And then you get the fruits of that with your children and relationships and things like that, right? But it's because you're making the multiplication work. You're showing up and providing grace to backfill.
Yeah.
And you're doing it, you're both doing it. Right? And that's the big deal. It's a dance, right?
Yeah.
Both partners have to show up and have to work at it. You can't do it yourself. And no matter how much you want to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that part about two people becoming one, right? Because the science shows that, right? Is that like your autonomic nervous system actually syncs up with your partner, right? And so that's the reason why, like, when you have a discord between your partner where you feel so physiologically like uncomfortable, right? It's because that other part of you is missing.
Interesting.
Right? So like, you know, when your stomach's churning and you just don't feel regulated, your breathing's off and all that kind of stuff. Like when the very few times when Danielle and I are not in alignment with each other, like I just want it to go back to like the way it should be. Right? Because it just feels awful.
Physical discomfort.
Physiologically, I'm like, I know something's off. Right? And that's the thing that I love about being married, right? Is like I feel like I have found the other half of me.
Yeah, well, and that's what's so interesting is what's the Jerry Maguire? You complete me. Like, wait, no, you're supposed to be a complete person. You're one.
Yes.
Right? You are one
Yep.
and one, becoming one. Right? Like, you need to be the whole person. And that's that other, I want somebody, to fill this gap. Well, okay, this is maybe where the English language starts to fall apart. It's cool. My wife has strengths that I don't.
Yep.
And we complement each other.
Yep.
But, like, if I don't show up, if I've got holes and I'm not, I'm expecting her to fill those holes,
Yeah.
that is a recipe for disaster.
Yep.
Right? And that goes back to dealing with our own baggage, our own junk. We got to deal with our own junk and bring our A game. She does the same. We have grace with each other, and then it can work.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty rich recipe, right? And that's that whole, to make it all come together, there's a lot there that has to happen. So it takes a lot of intentionality. It takes a lot of patience. It does take grace. This goes to some people have said to me, wow, you have this great marriage, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I do. Thank you. And they're like, what are your hobbies? And I'm like, my family. And they're like, what? And I'm like, they're like, no, like baseball or golf or whatever. I'm like, no, my family.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I came from a broken home. Like, I'm intentional, like working on my family. Like, I don't always want to have game time with my kids or whatever, but I know that like that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So I will go do it. Oh, much like, hey, if I want to go hunt, then I better, practice with my bow, right? It's, practice isn't always fun, but you do the reps because you want to get there. Okay, again, it's embracing the suck. We're back to where we started. The idea, though, the recognition that you put in the work to get the result that you want, and it's future facing, right? It's not, it isn't instantaneous. And I think there's a whole thing we should probably do maybe next time on delayed gratification because we're already running pretty long. Why is delayed gratification so vital, right? And we should talk about like the marshmallow
Yep.
test and all that stuff because, you know, um, there's so much there, and that gives you, again, that gives the person that foundation that they need, that then they can show up and be present and be healthy,
Yeah.
right? Um, and no, none of us is perfect. We have all these holes in our foundation, and the Lord can help heal them and fix them. But if you can give the kid, a head start, don't poke out the blocks out of the foundation to begin with, or just fail to give them to them.
Yeah.
If you can give them a solid foundation, you're putting them that much further ahead.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I do. I think that's going to be a future one. Let's see. I think we hit on all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to wrap it up in prayer?
Let's wrap it up. Okay.
You want to lead this time?
Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us this opportunity. Please allow us to be able to reach people's hearts.
Yes,
Please
Lord.
allow it to be able to speak to people and give people the tools and maybe something that they need in their life. Thank you for this opportunity for me to be able to spend this time with Doug and yeah, just want to thank you for this opportunity and appreciate all that you bring into our lives. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.